All right, now to Ohio Republican Congressman Jim Jordan on if any of the chances of resolving this whole thing are going to go up or down right now. You don't have a lot of time, Congressman, so what's your best sense of where this goes?
Well, I mean, look, I don't know that the Senate's going to agree with what they just passed. I mean, I think, Neil, first of all, what gets me is I'm so sick and tired of this class argument that the other side makes. We're all Americans. Taxes shouldn't go up for any Americans. We know this. We know it hurts jobs. Every American. Frank just gave you the numbers. In fact, it's not the 10% unemployed who are nervous about this bill. It's the 90% who have a job who are afraid that if this thing passes, they may not have one in the future. That's the concern. So I'm sick and tired of this class
that
game.
I understand, Congressman. Then could I get your take on this other development that, to me, seemed like a grenade thrown in the middle of this? Others have told me, well, you know, it's just the way Washington works. But the White House negotiators on the Bush tax cuts, adding in extending the Obama stimulus tax cuts, and maybe throwing into the mix extending jobless benefits, leaving even out the jobless benefits at $150 billion a year, $1.5 trillion over 10 years. It dwarfs the cost of extending the tax cuts on the well-to-do. The big issue for them, not being able to pay for the rich cuts, not an issue not being able to pay for these. But my question, the hypocrisy notwithstanding, is what does that mean about this process and where it's going?
I don't think it's, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think anything it may get to the point where nothing passes, which is the worst of all worlds for all Americans and for our economy.
Well, would you, Congressman, I'm keeping jumping and I apologize, but would you then vote for this? Because by and large, the White House is extending or pushing to extend its own tax cuts, albeit not to the size in the aggregate of the Bush tax cuts, but the stimulus-related taxes, the portion that Republicans by and large did like. So would you just sort of turn up your nose, vote for that, as long as it included extending the rich cuts?
If we could extend the current tax rates on everyone, so no one's taxes goes up, I think that's a position Republicans are for, and we've been strongly in favor of that because that's what's best for families, best for small business, best for the economy. So yeah, if we could extend it for everyone and not play the class game and not play this.
But what I'm saying, I know that extending for everyone, but even if it included this provision that the White House, I guess, is now pushing,
that the making work pay and the tax credit, I think those are not near as effective. But I'd be willing to look at that if we keep all the Bush tax cuts in place. So in other words, if capital gains...
So that's what they did. I think they just offered you a negotiating point, and you would be willing to take it.
Well, I don't know if I'd be willing to take it. I'd be willing to look at that. What I know I'd be willing to take is what you know, is extending all the tax cuts that were in place in 01 and 03.
Okay. Bottom line is, if people are worried about deficits, and if you make the argument that tax cuts worsen deficits, there's another argument he made that they actually are stimulative longer term. Leaving that aside, it is fair to say that whatever we come up with, if we strike a deal, is going to be much worse for the deficit than was earlier thought, right?
Well, maybe in the short term, but I disagree with the premise, Neil, and I assume you do too. This idea that somehow allowing Americans to keep their money is going to add to government deficits. The truth is, government spending produces government deficits.
You're right about that. You're right about that.
We have to get to the basics. The basics are we spend too much money. I'm the guy who offered the only balanced budget in Congress. We need to do a balanced budget. We need to start phasing down spending. You send that message, you keep tax cuts in place, and send the message we're going to bring down spending and get to balance, watch our economy take off. Instead of the message they're sending today and this false argument, somehow if families and small business owners and American taxpayers get to keep more of what they earn, more of their money, somehow that's going to add to the deficit. Americans don't buy that. They know that government spending creates government deficits. We need to spend less. So I just fundamentally disagree with the Congressman Hines who was on here and talked about somehow allowing people to keep their money is going to add to the deficit. It may in the short term, but it's spending that caused it in the first place. That's what we got to focus on.
All right. Thank you, my friend. Very good seeing you.
Thank you.
Congressman Jim Jordan.